The rapid emergence of space infrastructures had another effect. By the 1980s, humankind had effectively annexed near-Earth space to serve the planet. Most satellites came to be concentrated in three zones. 1. Geostationary Earth orbit, GEO, at about 22,300 miles, dominated by global communications and observation satellites. 2. Medium Earth orbit, MEO, at about 11,000 to 12,000 miles, occupied primarily by navigation spacecraft. And 3. Low Earth orbit, LEO, at around 1,200 to 100 miles, with payloads in orbits at all inclinations doing almost everything. In practice, most satellites in that zone orbit between 200 and 600 miles. Above 600 miles is the strongest part of the inner Van Allen radiation belt, making that region undesirable for long-lived vehicles. Below roughly 200 miles, drag from very tenuous atoms of Earth's outer atmosphere brings satellites down too quickly, although high-resolution reconnaissance satellites may dip much lower to get the most revealing views. As was true in other space sectors, the post-Cold War, somewhat temporary decline in Russian capability was more than compensated by the continued rise of Western Europe, Japan, Canada, China, and India. That meant that civilian and military space infrastructure continued to globalize even as space networks fed the globalization of the world. Moreover, the ideology of free markets that got renewed prominence in the West in the 1980s accelerated the commercialization of civilian space systems. Multinational corporations, rather than governments or government-sanctioned monopolies, came to control a large fraction of satellite communications, and orbital launch and Earth imaging services partially migrated into the commercial sector. In this chapter, I group space infrastructures into three broad categories. The first two, observation and communications, became the dominant Earth-focused applications of the early space age. But a noteworthy phenomenon of the 1980s and later was the growing global dependence on location and timing services from government navigation satellites originating in the military. Navigation thus became a critical third category. As the U.S. Air Force-run Global Positioning System, GPS, came to be integrated into automobiles and smartphones, it became an important sphere of commercial activity and daily life, deepening our dependence on space infrastructure. Consequently, Russia, China, Western Europe, and others began to develop competing systems. For the public, these systems, like their counterparts in the first two categories, are effectively invisible. One only notices space infrastructure on the rare occasions when it does not work. Observing Earth. As in all aspects of rocket and space technology, the line between military and civilian Earth observation was blurry from the outset. Reconnaissance satellites, which had been so critical to the origins of the space race, needed high-resolution imaging. But lower-resolution cameras, sometimes derived from failed intelligence projects, were suited for taking pictures of weather systems or lunar and planetary surfaces. Weather information was equally valuable to military and civilian clients. Military and intelligence requirements often required a considerable investment in secret sensor development, for example, in the infrared region for detecting the heat signatures of enemy rocket launches. But as weather and Earth science satellites exploited more and more wavelength bands, they needed advanced instrument development too, often derived from declassified military technologies. In the United States, the National Reconnaissance Office flew Corona spy satellites, which returned photographic film in re-entry capsules until 1972, supplemented by similar high-resolution Gambit satellites to take close-up images of targets. Electronic methods of returning images could not produce the resolution required to be militarily useful before the late 1970s. Meanwhile, NASA launched the first experimental weather satellite.